that our speakers are on stage. Please give them a round of applause. We are grateful to them for coming here and discussing this important issue of what happens to conventional sources in the years to come. I'm going to hand it over to Shri Kapil Bansal to steer the discussion ahead. Yes, I request everybody to turn their, put on their headphones. That's how you'll be able to hear everyone better. And I request all our speakers on stage to keep the mic close to the mouths so that we get a good audio output. I'll hand it over to Kapil Bansal to steer this discussion.
Good morning, everyone. It's interesting to see and hear my own voice. Let me pull my headphones off. Okay, so it's very interesting setup that has been seen, because given the enormous stage that is there, it just talks about how transition of technology is happening, and then exactly the same topic that we are talking about, how to harness a transition from what's been conventional to the renewable world. And as we see from the way, the overall climate change that we have seen, the transition has to start happening. And for that transition to happen, we have to, as at least from an Indian standpoint of view, we have taken certain tall targets from a Paris Agreement, which was started in 2015 COP21, where NDCs was taken and we have set our goals. We have been revising those goals towards aggressive targets, and to achieve that, it's a great achievement that India has taken in the due course of time. And that journey has started on a very positive note to look at the energy transitions elements. And what I am seeing here today is going to be a very enriching discussion, because we have eminent speakers over here. They are going to speak from the industries and their industry, what they are doing the transition, how they are doing that transition. We have policymakers which are going to talk about how these policies are going to accelerate the overall energy transition. And we also have the knowledge partners, think tankers, who have been helping us in driving this overall transition elements. Just to put down certain, facts for the audience also, that what are the targets that we are achieving. So we are looking at an overall 830 gigawatts of overall energy installed capacity by 2030 to achieve our targets of 500 gigawatts of renewable, let me say from a non-fossil fuel or non-conventional basis. Out of these 500, 420 odd gigawatts is being looked for coming from our renewable energies. So that means that there has to be a significant investment, and we are looking almost at an investment of $44 to $45 billion on year-on-year level. And already there is a policy to talk about achieving 50 gigawatts. And when I was talking in the morning with some of the eminent speakers who are going to talk about it, these are tall tasks we are facing with the existing assets. We are having conventional energies. We have seen the transition happening, those asset utilization, and then building the new assets. India is a very scarce country with limited resources, from the natural resources, from the land, from the people, from the skill, from the finances, from the technology. All has to come together in an accelerated manner to take the things forward. And with that, I've been very privileged to drive this discussion with Jeevan Jethani ji, who's coming from the MNRE, bringing the policies to action. So starting the discussion with Jeevan to understand, what are the priorities that you are looking with these opportunities. I wouldn't say challenges anymore, because we have to take this planet and this country to the next level, and we need to become a developed nation from Vikas to Viksit. That's our vision, right? So what are the policies that would promote this transition from conventional to the renewable?
Thank you, Kapil. So first of all, I would like to inform all of you that today is a very special day for MNRE, because today is our foundation day. on 6th of December 1982, the Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources, DNES, was formed under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Earlier, yes, we should give a big applause to our scientists, our MNRE officers who has taken this journey from watt scale to gigawatt scale. So earlier when we started in 1982, we were just thinking of just what solar lights, solar lamps or like that. And in 1992, a separate ministry of non-conventional energy sources, it was again MNES, earlier it was called MNES. It was formed, and which is the first of its kind of ministry in the world, which has separate ministry for the renewable energy. And in 2006, to further enhance, I would say, the new technologies, integrating new technologies, the ministry's name was changed to Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So this is how our journey started from 1982 to so far. And we have the ambitious target, as Kapil has mentioned, that we have to reach 500 gigawatt by 2030. And we are prepared for it. So far, we have reached 200 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in the country. And we have the roadmap with us, how to reach 500 gigawatt by 2030. Not only by 2030, but we are having plans for making India energy independence by 2047 and the net zero by 2070. So I will just talk about how we are planning up to 2030 rather than going towards the 2047 or 2070. So to reach 500 gigawatt, we have to add, say, 50 gigawatt every year. And for that, we have already given a bid trajectory to the Renewable Energy Implementing Agency, which are NTPC, NHPC, Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam, and NHPC. So they are our REIAs. They are going to bid. Our SECI is also one of our REIA, which is our own agency. And now recently it has been given a status of Navratna. So these bid trajectories are there. They have to complete the bidding process by 2028, giving a time for installation of projects for the 2 years so that we have that 500 gigawatt in place by 2030. This is apart from what we are planning for the green hydrogen mission, wherein we are targeting 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen production in the country by 2030. And there I think we need around 125 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. And for that, to make that capacity to be achieved, we have put in place a framework. Now we have a mission director in the ministry. A separate mission director is there. Mr. Abhay Bakre has recently joined as a mission director. On front of the transmission, we are having the green energy corridor, wherein we are giving grant up to 33% for creating a transmission infrastructure. As we know, the potential of renewable energy is located in certain pockets of the country. Particularly, I will say that wind. Of course, solar we have all over. But for solar, when we talk about the land, we need land, large chunk of land. And large chunks of land are available only in the, say, state of the Gujarat, Rajasthan. And there we are getting a lot of capacity and getting the power transmitted from these pockets to the other load centers. The green energy corridor is being. We are also targeting distributed energy because we know that creating a large chunk of plants at one place may be cause challenges for the grid integration. So we are targeting distributed renewable energy also. Like recently the PM Surya Ghar scheme was launched, wherein we are targeting 1 crore household, or we say 10 million households to have their solar rooftop. And there we are providing a subsidy of total 78,000 rupees per household for a capacity of 3 kilowatt in each household. So there we are targeting 30 gigawatt to come from only the rooftops that is going to install on the households. In addition, the target is also for the government buildings, target is also for the C&I sector. So total target under the scheme is 45 gigawatt. In PM Kusum scheme, which is targeted towards the farmers, now we are targeting 35 gigawatt of solar energy capacity addition through feeder level solarization. And friends, I would like to say that if we provide solar power to all the farmers in the country, we'll need 120 gigawatt of solar capacity. And that is possible. When we say Gujarat is moving forward, so what Gujarat is doing? Gujarat is giving solar power to the agriculture during daytime. So they are shifting the agriculture load to the daytime so that they can supply solar power to the agriculture load. And agriculture load can have the solar power if suppose there is a monsoon period, there is a rain, you don't need power. So, and their solar power is also low in that period. So that can be adjusted. So solar power is best suited for the agriculture. The only thing we have to create distribution infrastructure sufficient so that we can provide solar power, daytime power to all agriculture in the country. So these are the few things which we are targeting. And of course, during the discussion, I will share more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeevan. It's quite enlightening that you started with some of the critical policies and the lay down of it. But I will still continue one question, which is very important because you started saying that there is so many companies, IRAs that you've been working with, and the journey of your ministry. But then collaboration is all about that makes it successful, right? So you have MNRE, you have MOP, Ministry of Power, you have MOPNG, which is Ministry of Oil and Power and Petroleum and Natural Gas. So there are different ministries that you have to interface with because that becomes a critical area from a transition standpoint of view. So how is that collaboration happening, which I think most of our audience would also like to understand?
So when I said we moved from the watt to kilowatt to megawatt, now gigawatt, and we are generating what we are generating? We are generating mainly electricity. And who is controlling the regulations or rules related to electricity? It is Ministry of Power. And therefore, the role of Ministry of Power is critical when we are going to promote the renewable energy. And we have a close coordination with Ministry of Power. You would see a lot of orders that has been issued by the regulation that has been issued by the Ministry of Power is towards promoting the renewable energy, like the right to consumer rules they have notified. On transmission, they have issued many orders. The ISTS waiver, the RPO. So all are, you will see that these are towards promoting the renewable energy. And this is a requirement. This is a requirement of the country. We have to increase the share of renewable energy. So therefore, the contribution from the all ministries are there. We are having a coordination. It is being coordinated at the highest level of Cabinet Secretary. You have also talked about the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Of course, we are having a better coordination with them. Number of issues which is being resolved through coordination. Not only that, but other ministries also, like agriculture. When we talk about the PM Kusum scheme, which is related to the farmers, or when we are talking about the how to have the more and more solar towards the rural area, then there comes the role of the Panchayati Raj. Then getting the land. So land resource department is a critical department for us. So we are having a coordination amongst all the government functionaries which are having a different stakes in the promotion of renewable energy.
Thank you. That's quite enlightening. So basically, you're saying we are, the catalyst and the execution policies and all has been coordinated in a very cordial manner with all the ministries. Now, moving that thought process to Sarit, Jeevan did mention that there is a tall task, right? and NTPC has also laid down both conventional, renewable, as well as future technologies. So can you just give the limelight in terms of how NTPC is seeing this growth, and what are the challenges that you're facing which can be enabled through this conference or this discussion?
Thank you, Kapil. As you know, NTPC is one of the largest power producers in India. We contribute almost 25% power of India, and we colloquially say also that 1 out of 4 bulbs that are lit in the country is because of NTPC. So far, NTPC was known for its thermal power when we had already reached a whooping capacity of 76,000 megawatt. We have at the apt time transition towards the renewable energy, and as Mr. Jethani just said, we are an integral part of MNRE in fostering the renewable energy in the country. We are an REIA also, so we have been given task by MNRE also to move to their trajectory. Apart from that, NTPC, I'll just brief the house over here, has a current running capacity of around 4 gigawatts. We are already reaching the 4 gigawatt mark. We have another 20 gigawatt in pipeline, which is going to shortly come. We are targeting to be 60 gigawatts by 2032. So not only on the solar front, we are important players in wind also. We are developing now the models, the complex models for RTC and FDRE projects also, which I think will come up in discussion shortly. We are also steadily moving into the pump storage and the batteries. So in all domains of, I would say, renewable energy, NTPC intends to contribute, and would like to contribute to the PM's and the government's goal of becoming net zero by 2070. Kapil, this answers a brief profile about NTPC.
Absolutely. But then, I'm slightly changing the format where I'm asking a question out of the exam. Since I asked Jeevan that how all ministries are collaborating, I would like to ask, normally when I have two bosses, I normally have a lot of sweat. So when you are sitting as an IRA for MNRE and you are sitting under the Ministry of Power under NTPC from since ages, how do you manage these two bosses?
Let me be very honest on this. There is a tremendous support from MNRE to all the REIAs, to all the government agencies, whether it be collaborating with any of the other industry. We bring the issues and they are solved at an amazing pace, I would say. So as Mr. Jethani said also here, that there is a very close coordination between the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energies. The agenda is the same for both the ministries. There are intermittent regulations which needs to be modified on this, and for that a beautiful setup has been done by MNRE. That is, we have a joint meeting also which is being conducted by MNRE, wherein Secretary Power also participates along with Secretary MNRE. So I think the problem that you enlightened never happens on the renewable sector, and that is visible from the pace that Mr. Jethani said, that from kilowatts to gigawatts now we are moving at a very fast pace. So MNRE and the Ministry of Power both are understanding the problems, the challenges, and are trying to mitigate it in the best possible manner. Let me here also tell one more thing which would be a better appreciation of the problem, that we all know that energy is on the concurrent list. So the state governments also have a lot of role to play, and this makes the task of both our apex ministries, MNRE and Power Ministry, how to integrate the entire ecosystem in the electricity sector. But it would not be out of place here again to reiterate that MNRE as a nodal agency for this is doing a human task in promoting renewables in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was quite enriching, because I always keep thinking in my head as to if I have to grow, I should not be given hurdles, but I should be given the smooth part to accelerate, and that is what is coming out very clearly from the information that is provided. Now moving to Vivek. Vivek, since I'm always get excited when I see new things are happening and at the scale level. And Adani has been a great discussion and talk globally when we're talking about 30 gigawatts of single largest plant being put together, which is going to up to 45 gigawatt, can be visible from space and all. So those are very interesting to talk about in the global forums when I also go and talk. So wanted to hear from your side, from a policy standpoint of view, from a vision standpoint of view, 500 gigawatts, but you are driving things on the ground. So what's your vision and how you see them enabling, and what are the hurdles that you face during those execution? The scale is amazing, and we would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Kapil. So first, let me talk about the vision. In a simple term, I would say our vision is by and large aligned with India growth story. Fact is that India in last few years, in the electricity demand side has grown by 8% plus. And we do see that next 5 to 7 years, there is no looking back in terms of growth. Reason being, a lot of effort has been done by the government in terms of PLI scheme. There's a lot of urbanization action happening, and that other infrastructure also have a cascading impact in terms of demand. I'm not talking about data center itself, which India is becoming one of a hub. So understanding the India need for energy, I would mention that even in the thermal sector, we are currently in the coal base we are at. Yesterday it came in the press, so now we are 17 plus gigawatt. Of course, NTPC in the public sector are the leader. On the private side, we are the leader, and we are going to add every year around 1.5 to 2 gigawatt of thermal to meet the requirement of the country. Having said that, as you mentioned that we have exponentially added renewable capacity. We are currently at 12 gigawatt. We are going to add 1.5 to 2 gigawatt of thermal every year. We are going to add almost 3x of renewable every year. And that brings to the point that, you mentioned about the Khavda sites. Yes, I think I would invite people in the panel also and others to come and actually visit the site. It's one of a beautiful site. Even NTPC has, I think, 4 or 5 gigawatt of space there. So this is going to be a global hub, and in fact, people will come to see that there's some as big as site could be there. So from our perspective, we're clear that we need to move fast on renewables. So our RE capacity will be added. As I said, we are right now 12 gigawatt. Will be 45 gigawatt by 2030. But as I said, that we will not throw baby out of the bathwater. There is requirement for thermal also to support India grid. And yes, when we do these two together, we need to be also be mindful of the fact that how best we can address the possible solar hours. I think Jeevanji this mentioned that if we add solar capacities, we need to also consume, either we shift the load or we have enough storage to meet the evening peaks. And then in between, we need to also take care of the flexible operation, which we are discussing and we are seeing something on ground, but it has to really move ahead from 55% to 40, and maybe tomorrow, after 2030, we can think even beyond that. Because China and other countries are looking beyond that, and we need to really invest there in terms of efficiency in the thermal generation, and maybe a new innovation need to be done around that. So it is going to be a balancing act. Without any doubt, the RE capacity will be, as I said, 3 to 4 times more than the conventional. But the thermal, I think the RE story will stitch well if we also have an equivalent amount about storage, whether in the form of battery storage or in terms of PSP. From our perspective as Adani, as I said, that we have sites of visible sites or required sites for RE in Gujarat, Rajasthan and other states. We also have 30 gigawatt of PSP sites. Out of that, we have already started work on one on 500 megawatt and another on 1800. So we are very conscious and mindful that PSP is required to support RE. On the battery also, and we are started working on in Khavda site itself. So you will see in Khavda site solar, wind, battery. So it will be one site to look at all possible RE technology solution. And recently, I think there's a concept paper which came out from from the perspective of transmission utilization. I find that to be very, very encouraging and interesting for the sector. That there is a thought that future solar capacity added in these, where especially the green corridors are used, ISTS, from the utilization perspective, increase that they need to compulsory have battery storage of 25%. So that I think will add up to the transition story, because that's important. Otherwise, solar alone or wind infirmity, if we can't address through proper integrating with ESP and batteries and ancillary, you will not be able to have a round-the-clock solution. From our side, we are putting our things on all things so that we have a smooth transition without impacting the India economic growth story or India power requirement.
Excellent. The scale at which and the aggression at which Adani does it is amazing. So I just want to hold the thoughts on your numbers that you talked about. There's a phenomenal, like what NTPC has done from ages. You have done it in a very short time. So now to accelerate that further, there are few building blocks that you need, or pillars. For example, financing. For example, technological availability. So two things I wanted to understand is, how are you ensuring that these projects are further accelerated with the need for finances is not the bottleneck, one, and on the second side is, are you looking this whole demand which is going to be created for your own captive supply, or you're also looking for the merchandise side of it? So two elements, because market and finance both has to go hand in hand for a player like yourself.
I think fair question. So I missed that mentioning that we ourselves are one of our energy consumers. So you're right that we have a lot of captive requirement. Just to share with the audience, whether it is cement or for that matter port, which is not that much, but cement for sure. We have a lot of commitment in terms of ESG there. So we are trying to first make cement itself whatever extent possible green. As we speak, just to give you a number, 1000 megawatt or 1 gigawatt of capacity they are installing to meet their power requirement and to have a transition from conventional power which they are using. So that's just one number, but within our system, we are one of energy consumers. We have copper, which has commissioned recently. Again, energy requirement is there. We are meeting that starting with 35% green there. We have PetCam. PetCam is rolled out already. FC has happened. PetCam also is a huge project. So there is around 1400 megawatt. Sorry, we're installing day one to meet their 35% requirement through clean. And as we move along, we'll further go ahead. So to answer your point, we are conscious and we want to be ESG compliant for all our energy companies. Yes, as I said, there is a path. We'll start with 30-35% and gradually move towards as much as possible there. Now on the challenge side, certainly I'm sure Ministry will also acknowledge that the most difficult part which as a country we are trying to address is that how we are not dependent on China. In last 5 years, I think a lot of action has happened, and therefore the PLI scheme or ALMN, which a lot of uproar maybe has happened, but maybe there is a merit to have a domestic manufacturing, which today, as we speak, because of this effort from the ministry, the manufacturing is happening in India. Yeah, maybe we can argue that right now it's module, we need to move towards cell. The challenge, if you ask me, is having the supply chain control for India as a country. But yeah, specifically for Adani, again, just to share that we have a backward linkage also. we have a 10 gigawatt module manufacturing. Right now 4, it will move to 10. We are also into the cell manufacturing. Wind, we are 5.2 gigawatt machine we have. And we have also other, ancillaries, which are glass, aluminium, which are all required to stitch a solar panel. So that's one challenge. I would say still some degree of work is required to meet the pace of capacity addition which we are envisaging. Especially concern will be, and I'm sure all people in the sector will say, is on the polysilica up in the stream, how quickly India can reach. That will be a critical part, the first element of solar manufacturing. And we are also, going to be there, but yeah, there is some degree of transition required in terms of effort, because there is a technology which is right now with China. Similarly, I would say that I don't see any issue, because MNRE, MOP or PMO all are aligned, and earlier it was a common minister, now it's separate, but I don't see any change. But transmission is critical. So how synchronized the transmission is with RE will be, need to be seen. And this, thanks to the IPP, they are also constantly pushing that, I am ready, but I need transmission. And now you would see some of the PPAs or some of the awarded projects, because we are not in that, we are not participated in much, but the delay in those awarded projects largely are either they are saying on the land or the transmission side. I think that is something as India, even though we have done well as compared to any other country, because if you ask transmission in US, people will just say it's 7 to 8 years delay. This is a huge issue. But India, the biggest India story, if you ask me, for RE is transmission, because ISTS waiver, maybe it's in sunset now, but it has helped, and very conscious effort towards that has been put. Now, having said that, I think the synchronization of all the elements, starting from the supply chain, material, till the point of actually delivered to the consumer, all need to synchronize, where I would also talk about the health of distribution entities and how proactively they are adopting and signing this. We can't push in a concurrent list a DISCOM to sign a PPA if they don't see a merit in terms of the entire power delivery, whether it is 24 hours or they have to still have a fixed PPA plus this. All this complexity are there on ground, which need to be addressed while we are targeting for 420 or 430 gigawatt. So these are practical things which we need to address. And if you see right now also our capacity, annual capacity addition, 15 to 80 gigawatt we are touching. We are talking of 40 to 45 gigawatt for a country to achieve that number. So that 3x which we need to do has to be done. All these aspects need to be addressed and fine-tuned well.
Thank you, Vivek. That gives some grounds to understand there are challenges which have been talked from the industry standpoint of view, and technological advancements have started taking in shape. So Anupam, the question coming to you is, the scale is there, the policy is there, the intent is there, the execution is happening on the ground. We need to bring a lot of efficiencies, and to bring those efficiencies, like just what we heard, 200 gigawatts has already been installed, right? And our peak demands are what? 400 or maybe in between the range of 360 to 400 on a continuous basis, right? Jeevan, is that correct? 220. The 220 gigawatts is needed. So there is an installed capacity. How do you see your company providing that global expertise into the Indian market to achieve that efficiencies and not lose the energy on the ground without further such kind of investments coming in? And we definitely have seen the challenges of supply chain. We have talked about challenges. Vivek talked about transmission. So there is the capacity there. How do you think you can provide new technological advancements that can drive the things on the ground?
Thanks, Kapil. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. This is my first time being in a panel in India, and I very much appreciate it. That's true. I mean, Enerzinx as a company, we operate in 3 different markets: United States, India, and Australia. We started off with the United States. And in my mind, when it comes to renewable, when it's the whole renewable revolution, when it started, Australia can be potentially seen as being the number one because they started early on, followed by United States, and then followed by India. But India, of course, is moving much faster in my mind compared to the other countries. So in some ways, we can take the lead from these two countries and try to see the problems they are getting into and proactively address those in India. Now, I've been involved with India for the past 6-7 years, following the renewable energy transition. We have worked with Adani, we have worked with NTPC, all the major players over here. And my take on the subject is maybe we are moving too fast, right? In the sense like, we are building, we're building all these, we have all these lofty targets. We are building solar and wind facilities all over the country. And maybe what's missing in there is, let me take a step back. In terms of new technologies, there are plenty of new technologies. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, mostly in the research phase. Like people are talking about 24-hour battery storage, right? Not the 4 hours, right? So which hasn't been tested. People talk about the grid forming technology. Some of you are familiar with that. That provides the necessary inertia which you lose if you are not using a thermal power plant. So there is a lot of talk about these things, and these things will come. But in the meantime, I think the challenge of India is not new technology per se. I think we need to do some cleanup, some hygiene, like housekeeping work in India, in terms of planning, in terms of developing systems like policies and protocols. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So policies and protocols, as well as investing in understanding the grid system as is, and how do we transition in a phase-wise manner to the net zero targets or a certain gigawatt threshold. I remember I was in India like about 10 years ago, and I tried to understand the state of the art or the system as is as of today. I don't know how things have changed in the past 10 years, but at the time, I'll give you a small example, right? And this is a problem to some extent globally, but it's a little bit more acute in India per se. So for instance, right, I mean, we create a mathematical model of the entire system. We try to understand what will 10% penetration do, 20%, 30%, and so on and so forth. The only reason you can perform these things is the only way you can do it is if you have an accurate representation of the grid system. In the past, I have seen, that in India that due diligence hasn't been performed. Not that the United States has a perfect picture or Australia has a perfect picture either. I mean, we see, inverters or solar plants in gigawatts dropping offline in terms of in the event of a grid disturbance, and which is not predictable, right? I mean, because we don't have the perfect world either in the United States. So, but in India, the problem is acute. So instead of looking towards more advanced technologies, which are still in the R&D phase, I think in India, more importantly, we need a lot more, housekeeping work, which is to enable the increased penetration in the future.
Sure, makes a lot of sense. Anything that you have brought or that has worked significantly in the global scenarios, and knowing your past experiences in India, that you can talk about, say one or two, because you talked about planning, household things, and also talked about some mathematical models. One of the things that we as EY is also working a lot on the power market forecasting, managing the different PPOs, etc. So, it's a vast country with diverse landscapes of resources availability. How do we use that scarce resources using these mathematical models that you would have also adopted in bigger countries like US, China, Europe, Union in totality? that can be brought to India? Some examples that you can throw light on?
Yeah, I haven't done business in China. I mean, we work with the Chinese companies, but I haven't looked at the grid. Europe is too fragmented. I mean, they have transmission issues much worse than India, because I was just before coming here, I was in Greece like last week, and I was talking to one of the guys over there, and they were telling me that on a weekend, they have so much surplus of renewable power, they don't know what to do with it. And the problem is not surplus power, the problem is the weak transmission. They cannot export power to Italy because they have surplus too. And so I don't want to comment on Europe and China, but what has worked in other countries, I'll tell you, is, back in the early days, right? I mean, there were only a handful of power plants that we were building, right? A few, maybe a couple nuclear, maybe some thermal, some gas turbines, and so on and so forth. What has happened in the United States is the interconnection queue, which used to be like maybe 100 generators, is now 10,000 generators, right? Because it's such a modular system that small players, big players like Adani, they are mushrooming all over the country and they're building left and right. And so what it leads to is clogging of the queues, right? The analysis, the studies are not being done fast enough. I'll give you an example. In Texas, a typical analysis for interconnecting a generating resource was being conducted in about 6 months. Today, it takes 3 years. So this simply because there is so much clogging in the queue. So in United States, we have very recently, there was a FERC order 2023, which says that we are not going to study every individual plant. We are going to study them as a group. So if you are electrically co-located, meaning to say, you have 10 or 50 facilities, they are very near to each other, we are going to study them together. But then that goes back to my previous point that you can only perform a study if you know that your databases are accurate enough, like you mentioned, right? Similarly, on the transmission side too, very recently, and this, I don't know why it took US so long, and India started early on this, is the transmission buildup. We all know that if the lead time for transmission is about 10 years, right? If you don't do it, if you don't start now, you're basically going to throttle the growth of the renewables, like what Vivek mentioned in his talk right now. So so these are some of the policy changes we have adopted in the United States. The clustering of the queues. We are incentivizing the battery storage. Like, if a developer is going to build a battery storage unit, they need a return on investment, right? They simply can't build it in a vacuum, right? So incentivizing them for ancillary services, for frequency control, for voltage regulation, ramp rate control, right? All of them. I don't know if those policies are I don't know, maybe Vivek can comment on that, but those policies are in place and people are being rewarded or not?
Absolutely. I could say that then the question is more of reverse knowledge from here to globally, because we are doing amazingly well when it comes to grid connectivity, the policies and all. At least I can speak from that perspective. But knowing that we have 2 more speakers and we are running short of the time, I'll go to Aryaman. Aryaman, in terms of the overall perspective that we have seen from renewables, we have seen from transition at the end use, which is where the transportation sector comes. There's a lot of discussion around e-mobility, and there is both proponents and opponents of e-mobility talking about we are moving the emissions from thermal power plants into the cities, right, or vice versa. What's your take on how India should adopt this whole transition of e-mobility, where we're looking at almost 30% of electrification at the roads by 2030. So how the demand-supply situation you think could be managed, and some examples that you can bring on live?
Thanks a lot, Kapil. Let me to bring this to perspective. I think this is a very interesting question because it has not just a volume impact, but also on the nature of demand impact on power. If we look at 2030, we expect there'll be about 50 million vehicles on road, electric vehicles, right? Now India is a very interesting country where majority are going to be two-wheelers. So about, you'll have about 40 million two-wheelers on road, all electric, right? But the balance of the 10 million is going to be distributed between four-wheelers and commercial vehicles, right? LCVs, HCVs. Now the interesting thing is, these 40 million two-wheelers will typically, and our estimates suggest anywhere between 35 to 40 terawatt hour energy consumption, right, by 30. That could be anywhere between 2 to 4%. So it doesn't mean a big impact. But if we look at the balance side, which is the other 10 million EVs, which are mostly HCVs, four-wheelers, they will have close to about 65, 70 terawatt hour energy consumption. Now, when you add that up, it leads to about a 4 to 5%, and there are various estimates of how much the 30 consumption is going to be. But the interesting thing is a good chunk of this demand is actually going to come in the evening at night. About 30% we expect to come through the CPOs and the charging point operators, and the balance 60-70% will be at home charging or evening charging, right, when people go back to homes, or you have a lot of other use cases like you have intercity bus travel, you have some LCV travel, where a lot of evening and late night charging will happen. Contrary to this, the generation is happening more in the day, right? So with solar power being about 300 gigawatt hour, there is the impact of EVs is not going to be too much on the increase in demand, but on the lopsidedness of the demand supply curve, right? Now, what does that mean? There are a couple of implications. One, need for BESS, goes up. So we estimate that a lot of public estimates say that about 200, 250 gigawatt hour of BESS will be needed, but we think because of the EV impact, this will be a bit higher. So maybe about 300 and above, right? Second is, it's going to see some interesting business models of charging, come solar power generation, come charging, especially in the countryside, rural areas, where you could combine these two units and create, on the spot charging entities. So some new business models might be created, right? Third is, right now it's not very critical, but as we have residual power in 50 million EVs on the road, there will be some nascency in the whole vehicle to grid technologies and how you extract that power back into the grid. I think that technology will start shaping up and you will start seeing adoption of that, right? And I think finally, all this incremental power generation need will actually need to be serviced via renewable, which basically means that the whole grid infrastructure, so each of these charging point operators you can expect will be consuming about 50 to 60 megawatt hour of power per year, which basically means the grid to have the readiness to supply, mostly in the commercial areas, to these charging point operators, that intensity of power. Because majority of charging, and we expect there will be need of about 1.5 million charging stations in India, given you will have about 10 million, non-two-wheelers, EVs on road. And that's actually lower than what the world actually recommends. But even that means you have such 1.5 such million units, which will consume about 50 megawatt hour per year, right, on a unit basis. The grid should be able to supply and manage, right, be able to supply to these CPOs. So I think those are the major implications from the EV side.
Thank you. But just because you give so many data points, I just wanted to check with you that, everything has its own fatigue. While we talk about these big numbers, I already seeing a lot of fatigue coming in saying that consumer behavior are now changing and there is a demand which was been very significantly looked at as getting de-accelerated, and people are more confused whether they should move from a greenfield EV or they should retrofit from an alternatives that are there in the powertrain. There are alternative fuels like ethanol is there is CNG, there is green hydrogen that can be utilized. So the fatigue towards the e-mobility has been visible and creating a confusing noise, and I'm sure there are people who have vested interest on both the sides promote that. So what's your take on these numbers? Are they achievable, or you see that the fatigue is definitely coming on the consumer side?
So I think 2 points here, Kapil. See, one, the whole EV story in India makes much more sense because the average distances traveled here are much lower. Average sizes of cars and the power required to run them are much lower. Speeds are much lower, right? Actually, India is very conducive for EV adoption. Globally, what you've seen, there has been a slowdown. There's of course the whole China and the geopolitics, with the import restrictions, etc., and the taxation on Chinese-made EVs, which is also causing that, and some parallel ripple effect here on India, right? But it might be 1 or 2 years here or there. but the whole 30% penetration, 25 to 30%, if not 2030, by 2031, 32, it will definitely happen, you know. And a lot of the other technologies that you're saying, like we're seeing green hydrogen. Now, green hydrogen by 2030, I think the transportation sector definitely has opportunity. The logistics sector, but not too much on transportation, at least till 2030, till the whole safety standards of green hydrogen are established, right? So that I don't see as a big risk, at least till 2030. Hybrid, yes, but hybrid vehicles are pretty expensive, right? Because you need to combine both of them together. And what's also happening is that the range of EVs is consistently going up, right? You have the luxury vehicles already with a 500-kilometer range vehicles, right? And as soon as that starts happening in entry-level and mid-segment cars, the adoption is going to drastically shoot up, because a mid-size car on a full tank also goes about 500, 600 kilometers, right? So the whole penetration of DC charging, which can help you charge the car in, let's say, an hour. So the whole risk of going towards EV is actually coming down. So there might be periods of slower and faster growth, but I think the overall picture in the penetration curve is pretty much real to believe.
Oh, excellent. This gives me the thoughts for, out of syllabus for myself also. Dr. Ravindra, you've been here, and I just got my sets of questions for you through the overall panel discussion. You're doing a lot of R&D activities in the closed course, and we just heard about, various elements of EVs. We talked about, ZET, which is called zero emission transportation. Do you see this happening in the Indian context, and what kind of R&D solutions that you're working upon, which can be utilized? That's one on the solutioning side, which you're working upon and being taken into account on the ground. Second is that something which brings commercial sense? Because a lot of the times the question that my clients ask me is, it's a very fragmented market, LSPs, logistics service providers, and they are not very keen towards any new adoptions till the time it has a proven technology and it is commercially viable and there is a money on the table for me to act upon. So two elements. Sorry, for me it was out of syllabus, so putting the question on you if it is of significance that you can provide to the audience.
Yeah. Thanks. These are quite interesting questions for me. So, especially on R&D side, what we are really doing for company cater the need of the country is that. So we talked about a lot of renewable energy. Whether we like or not like it, some sense, some degree.
Dr. Ravindra, you have to put your mic close to your mouth, because otherwise people will not be able to hear.
So are you able to hear?
Yes.
So some element of non-renewable source of energy is going to be there. So while we are really working for catering the need of our energy, so coal is going to be really getting reduced, and there is another source of really energy. What we are really looking for is, as a country, is nuclear. So nuclear may not be renewable, but it is really a clean energy, and it is, since physics, so it is a chain reaction by which really doesn't really refueled again and again. So nuclear is one energy where we can really generate clean energy. So that is one source of energy. And we are working a lot of things, because as you said, India needs a lot of proven track record to really deploy. So adoption of the technology is a big challenge in our country. So since we are working for many years, maybe last 4 or 5 decades, we are working on nuclear power. So with conventional, you are aware about, is called the PHWR, pressurized heavy water reactor. And now slowly we are moving from pressurized heavy water reactors with Russian technology. We are deploying the pressurized water reactors. That is a light water reactor design, wherein 1000 megawatt power plants are being constructed in the phased manner. And based on that, so now, because it's a carbon border adjustment mechanism that is called, recently heard. So Indian products are becoming really non-competitive in the market, export market especially, because one or other day this particular penalty will be levied on the Indian products. So for that reason, many private companies are looking forward for really using these particular modular kind of reactor. So wherein we can really generate the power in the smaller, rather than looking for the big power plants, maybe 200 megawatt or maybe 220 megawatt. So that is why small modular reactors, these are being thought to deploy in our country, especially for the steel power plants, coal, steel plants, and then coal plants. So these are really looking forward so that these can be deployed easily in our country. Another is pump storage power plants. So pump storage is one area where it needs large kind of pumps and then reversible turbines. So that is one area where we need to work upon. And another area we talked about the battery. So pump storage, of course, we need a large volume to store the water. There is another area where air batteries are also looked upon. So we can really keep the energy in the form of compressed air, that is called air batteries. So that also needs a lot of technologies, and these are the areas where I think we can gear up and really cater to the need of the areas where we are looking.
Sure. Thanks. So, we have a good, amazing panel overall. And I was joking to Sarit in the morning that normally either the conference people or consultants or the EPC players are making money. So what I wanted to leave with this audience who has put their time and the eminent speakers on the panel and the dais to give one advice from their side to make sure this conventional to renewable or energy transition happens, that they would love from their sides. Not preaching, but their heartfelt, top of the mind thought process, starting with Jeevan.
I think when we are using energy, we should be more efficient so that we need less energy and with more efficient use. Coming to a few points that has been discussed during the panel discussion, Vivek has pointed out about the challenges in the land and transmission. So of course land is the state subject, is still we are taking up with the states for providing land, and states are having their own policies like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Karnataka, Andhra. They have their conducive policies for promotion of renewable energy. So far as transmission is concerned, because when you are putting a large park like 30 gigawatt, 60 gigawatt at one place, then transmission has a critical role to play. And Mr. Anupam has mentioned that in US it takes 10 years to create a transmission line, which is not in case of the India, where we are getting transmission lines within 3 to 4 years. So for promoting transmission, what Vivek has mentioned, that the transmission lines which are being underutilized, I will say that because the solar power has only 20% CUF. If we are going to put more, say, solar plus battery in these lines for better utilization, that could be one option. Another option could be when we have the sunset about the ISTS waiver. We can think of giving more ISTS waiver period. It means increasing the ISTS waiver period, provided that the utility of transmission is increased in terms of, say, 50%, 60%. I mean to say that if we have the hybrid at one place, or a plant which can have a CUF of, say, 60% plus, then I think government can think of providing or extending the ISTS waiver for such plants. Thank you.
Wow. New policies in the making. Thanks, Jeevan. Moving to you, Sarit.
I tend to agree with Vivek a lot from the developer's perspective. In a zest for reaching the 2030 targets, two things that are of paramount importance which needs to be addressed somehow is the availability of land and the constraints that have now been posed by the transmission utilities. Just to make aware the house, you have the connectivity today, it's gone tomorrow. There is a problem which is larger here, how to secure the connectivity. You set up the plant, by that time the connectivity may go. So you have now very arduous policies of CTU which makes you pay land BG and hold the connectivity and all that. those regulations, I think, needs to be looked into on a larger perspective, because that may sooner or later, I would say, become a constraint on it. Second, just borrowing from the thought that we just had listened to the panel, is we need to somehow make incentives to change the demand pattern. We will need to provide power at a cheaper rate to the industry during the solar hours so that the demand shifts. Ultimately, a lot of capital is going into making RTC power, which perhaps has to be looked in with the fiscal side of the country's GDP and all. We are not as rich as what US is and the kind they can provide the subsidies. We need to have some kind of a balance between it, because myself and Kapil was also discussing that huge investments goes in PSPs, and if the new technologies, batteries take over very fast, what happens to PSPs? Things are there which will evolve during the time, but I think two takeaways from my side would be very nice government policies to pitch in between land and connectivity, and second is how we can see that the demand pattern we are able to shift. Thank you.
Excellent. Vivek, all mentioning your name, like
No, I have touched on everything, so I will not wear Adani hat now. I've been in this sector and worked with Jeevan since 2001. Everybody, most of the people in the sector have worked or trespassed, did something. What has surprised me, and that's why I'm saying we need to all work. The data availability actually has come down. In 2010, there was a clear mandate that the load curves and data from TSO will be published. Today, and I remember when we used to do this 8760R analysis, we used to get the load curves. Today, that is not published anymore. Why I'm saying this, sorry, we're being a little sharp on that. Whether we talk of 120 gigawatt, for example, we are discussing about that we have an agriculture load. We are not aware. Some are saying it's 60, some are saying it's 40. Really, it can really help in planning. All the investors right now, and including us, I'm saying from the investor side, the question is in their mind that how much solar we need. If we have this data, which is a load curve data, whether what Anupam mentioned for a better planning, I think there's a big thing we can do there. And today with EV, for example, also, EV charging what time, how much it will help. There are numbers in the market, every consultant saying one or other, but I have not seen anything published in POSOCO or in CA which has all the data in state-wise load curve, what hours of demand is there. I know I'm asking for too much, but we need to start somewhere. Again, give an example, in Europe, the TSO compulsory has to publish 15 minutes data. Australia, there is, and of course there is data privacy laws also along with it. But this will really help, especially in doing a smooth transition, because RE, when to give, what to give, even the investor deserve to know. Today, it would be a black box otherwise for them, and the lenders also. Lenders will ask, oh yeah, but maybe there will be duck curve, the price will go negative. All those questions are very genuine, and that can only be addressed with a robust analytical around it. And that is only possible if we have good data, baseline data.
absolutely. Let's you and me go for beer tonight, and we can do a lot of business.
I have been in your side all my life, so I know from where any analysis starts.
Absolutely. Moving to you, Anupam. Your thoughts?
That's true. It seems like you guys captured everything I wanted to say. Yeah, it's right. I mean, we need visibility. Everybody needs visibility, right? And it's a problem globally, right? Because this is critical infrastructure information, so people are a bit hesitant, but you can put policies and procedures in place to share the information. Without that, I think, look guys, fundamentally, we are moving away from a system that was designed 100 years ago, right? To a system that's basically, in a layman's term, it's power generated by computers, right? It's a current controlled current source, right? So it's basically computerized power. So moving from, this is a massive shift. And so transparency is very important. Load curves, the generation, like we run into issues with the models of the generating resources. I'll give an example. There are plants in India that are, 70, 80 years old. We know nothing about them. their dynamic their characteristics, how will they behave. And I had a discussion with somebody like 4 or 5 years ago where I said that, you know what, you need to know exactly what you have in the field. And there was a general pushback that, for whatever reason, there was some pushback. I couldn't break through it. So I think we need more transparency, more information, more data, and I think then only we can do a proper transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Aryaman, I know you and me can always talk about data and on length, but definitely some thoughts on your side as what are the things that you give as an advice over here?
Yeah. No, I have a slightly different and a slightly higher level view here. Look, in my almost 2 decades of consulting experience, I've seen many waves. I saw the .com wave, the consumer tech wave, the e-commerce wave, not that the AI wave. And 2 interesting observations, I've had in my career. One is, rising tide will lift all waves. So even if you're not participating directly, you're participating around the ecosystem of that, you will benefit, right? The second is the category creators who are at the helm and at the front of creating that wave, will make money very late, so they will need to burn a lot of capital. It will be highly competitive, but everyone around them, will continue to be profitable, right? If you look at e-commerce, and I'm talking about a very different category, everyone makes money in the e-commerce ecosystem except the e-commerce. If you look at airlines, look at AI, right? That ends up happening. So what that means is with this whole renewable wave, I think the conventional players have 4 broad themes of opportunities, One is, they participate in the slightly more profitable and the niche segments of solar and renewable, right? So you have open access, you have, hybrid solar wind, so you have some niches within them which could become interesting. Second is, you could create, play in the completely different ecosystem opportunities, like data centers we haven't spoken, right? There will be about 30 to 40 gigawatt of data center capacity in India, and actually it could be even higher. The demand of, and these data centers, a lot of them need to be next to the shore. They need close energy, and a lot of them actually are mandated by their buyers to have only 100% renewable energy generation, right? Because these are American companies who have, pledged to a lot of, green initiatives. So data centers is there, right? And then I think the whole alternative renewable energy sources like geothermal, offshore wind, etc. Now they might not be more than 3 to 4% of the overall generation by 2030. They say about offshore wind, we have a 40 gigawatt target, right? Even if we achieve 2030. But there will be very critical areas to at least play early into and be present in those spaces. Because 2035, 2040, you can at least play in those spaces early. And when those, technologies pick up, you are ahead in the adoption curve. And finally, the last theme too is actually as an investor, So you've seen Shell, you've seen BP, you've seen a lot of global conventional energy players, set up a lot of, funds, either participate as LPs or directly set up funds and do a lot of venture capital investing into the new age technologies. A lot of these technology and the RE play, right, in looking at the capex cycle, financially a bit different businesses than conventional businesses because the balance sheets look a bit different, right? So you need a different vehicle to participate in that. So I think those are another 3-4 ways at a slightly more strategic level, right, where you could think about, riding this wave.
Lovely thoughts. And last but not least, Dr. Ravindra, any advices from your side?
Yeah. From my side, we have to really look for more affordable and quicker solution. So we have got many private and public sector coal plants in the country, and most of the infrastructure is available, and only on the especially generation side we have to see that how quickly we can have another as a replacement. Suppose coal is being replaced by maybe solar or maybe nuclear, so we can use the existing infrastructure of the secondary side or maybe generation side, and on the side where the heat is being used for the generation of the steam, so that side whether it is a nuclear or solar, so that can be adaptable, and so that the rest of the structure will remain as is and will be quicker and more affordable solution will be there. I think that would be the most efficient and cost affordable solution for us.
Thank you. I know we are on the top of the hour, but this was a very enriching experience for me, at least, where we have explored what are the growth factors, what are the accelerators, what ways we can collaborate, what are the things that makes it accessible to each one of the audience in the overall opportunities in the Amrit Kal through energy transition. I'm just reading from the Logan, just taken over that. And this overall discussion has been very enlightening for at least for me. I don't know if it is open for questions to audience. So anyone, if they would like to ask questions, okay, there's one hand over there. Technology takes its own time. We can't hear you, sir, still. I know your question is $1 million question.
Good morning.
Yes.
Audible?
Yes.
Okay. My question is for Sarit Maheshwari ji. As he spoke about the renewable energy addition, that 60 gigawatt planning for by 2032, is NTPC going to change its image from thermal to renewable?
Sir, the image is all perceived by you people only. What I can share with you is that we are going to be a capacity mix of almost 40-60 by that time. That means we would be known as a energy company, not as a thermal company anymore. That much I can assure you, that our energy mix is changing drastically. Taking just a cue from this question, I would also like to inform the House that howsoever we may say for renewables, but coal is going to stay here for times to come. So therefore that makes NTPC all the more important onto the power stage, because we will be having a mix of both renewable energy as well as the grid supporting thermal energy, and will be a total energy company.
Absolutely. I want to also add that we are a infant stage, and the growth that we are looking is enormous. We are 10 years behind. So 830 gigawatts that we are looking at, we need to continue have both the things. We can't just rely on one. So I heard both Vivek and Sarit talking about managing conventional, but the growth and acceleration at a greater compounded rate with renewable.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? No? Good. So thank you everyone for such enlightening discussion. I am sure if I can take this handset with me so that I can keep learning and using it. With that note, thanks everyone. Looking forward for this interaction further going forward through calls for action. Thank you.
Please give a round of applause to our speakers on stage. Very interesting discussion. I would request Shri Kapil Bansal to please present mementos to our speakers here. We want to thank them for coming here and sharing the wealth of the knowledge with everyone. I request Mr. Bansal to please present a memento to Shri Jeevan Kumar Jethani of Areas. A memento for Shri Sarit Maheshwari of NTPC Renewables. A memento for Shri Vivek Sharma, Adani Energy Vertical. A memento for Shri Anupam Goyal of Energetics LLC. A memento for Dr. Ravinder Birajtar of Kilosk Brothers Limited. And memento for Shri Aryaman Tandon of Praxis Global Alliance. I would request Shri P.K. Pujari, Honorary Chairperson, Governing Council, PowerGen India and Indian Utility Week 2024, to please come up on stage and present Shri Bansal with a memento. Thank you so much for steering this discussion. I request all of you to please gather for a group photograph. Please give a round of applause to our speakers. We want to thank them for coming here. We'll take a short 15-minute coffee break, 15-20-minute coffee break.